Hello everyone. Thank you for joining the webcast today. My name is Giselle Ulbrich and I work for the Natural Resource Management Branch. And today I'm going to be reviewing our new program, the Resilient Agricultural Landscape Program. This is being offered for the first time under the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership. And the program opened on April 3rd of 2023. Let's jump right into it. So I'm going to go over the RALP objectives, important dates associated with the program, eligibility for funding, the funding offered and the cost determination for that. I will review the funding categories and their BMPs, some notes on applications, stacking options with other funding programs, and then at the end, review the program resources available to you. So the objective of RALP is to increase environmental resiliency of agricultural landscapes by accelerating adoption of beneficial management practices that maximize ecological goods and services. This includes natural benefits such as carbon sequestration, improved water quality, and biodiversity enhancement. Funding is being offered through a per acre payment over a 3-year term, and that is to help provide better support for long-term establishment of the BMPs being offered. Please note that carbon sequestered under RALP will be ineligible for carbon credits or greenhouse gas offsets for the duration of the 3-year land use agreement for these projects. Here we have the dates that the program is open for applications. You will notice that there are 2 different schedules here. That is because wetlands are one of the BMPs that we fund, and they have their own cycle schedule due to the timing of the work that occurs for those projects. So for wetlands, applications open on April 3rd of this year, and the first year will close on January 31st, 2024. And then for the next 2 years, the applications will open on February 1st and again close the following January 31st. For all other BMPs, the above cycle schedule applies. So applications opened up April 3rd, 2023. For this year, they will close November 30th. And then for each year after that, they will open again February 1st and close on November 30th. Projects are retroactive to the start of the current intake year. So for projects that are applied for in 2023, they are retroactive to April 3rd. For projects that are applied for in 2024, please note they will only be retroactive to February 1st, 2024. Projects cannot be applied for the following year. So if an applicant applied for a BMP project in 2023, it cannot be for a project they plan to implement in 2024. All BMP activities must be implemented within the year the application is received. So projects applied for in 2023 need to be implemented by November 30th, 2023. Or January 31st, 2024 for wetland BMPs. Also, please keep in mind for most BMPs, you will see there is a bit of a gap between intake cycles, so December and January are not covered, and we will not accept applications during those times. We'll go over eligibility for the program now. So we have a few applicant types that are covered. So first we have primary producers responsible for the day-to-day management and input costs of an agricultural operation in Alberta that produces at least $25,000 worth of farm commodities annually. Also eligible are groups such as grazing reserve associations or community pastures, as well as Indigenous applicants, and that applies to both individuals or organizations that manage agricultural land. The second part of eligibility is environmental farm plans. This is a requirement to be eligible for the RALP program. So applicants must have a current EFP certificate or letter of completion at the time of applying, or they must be in a position to receive one before the end of the project term. Keep in mind these are 3-year projects, so if you do not have an EFP certificate at the time of application, you do have those 3 years to complete one. Any EFPs that have been completed at the time of application must have been completed within 10 years from the application date, or they will not be considered valid. And if you do need to get started on an EFP, you can visit the Alberta EFP website listed at the bottom. That's www.albertaefp.com. Funding for RALP. Again, these projects are for a 3-year term. Funding maximums are $150,000 for primary producers and $300,000 for Indigenous applicants and group applicants, so those grazing reserve associations, community pastures. Minimum payments under the program is $2,000, and funding will be paid in 2 payments. 50% of the funding amount will be paid following application approval, and the remaining 50% is paid at the end of the 3-year project term. Over the next few slides, we'll talk about how this funding is determined. So we have a cost determination calculation that calculates the per acre fee offered. And this is calculated as the implementation costs of the project plus the opportunity costs when applicable, plus an impact adjustment. And I will review each of those items separately over the next few slides. You will notice there is an exception to this calculation, that is for wetlands. That category has a flat fee of $1,000 per acre. So first up, we'll talk about implementation costs. These are the project costs that are eligible for funding in a BMP project. Not every expense will be covered. So for example, a herbicide application is not an eligible expense. We will only cover expenses listed in the funding list, so please make sure you review that before applying. And also some items that are covered will have a set cost maximum. There is a cost maximum table at the end of the funding list that outlines each item that has a maximum cost associated that can be expensed. There are 2 types of implementation costs. We have minimum requirements. So these are the activities that a BMP project must include in order to be eligible for funding. And we have allowable enhancements. And these are optional items that are eligible for funding if applicant chooses to include them, but they are not required. And in the funding list, each of these implementation costs that are required or offered are clearly listed for each BMP offered. So make sure you review that prior to your application. We strongly encourage quotes or invoices be submitted. That's to help substantiate eligible expenses to streamline application review and approvals. Note that invoices and receipts will be required for all incurred expenses. Next, we have opportunity costs. This is the program's estimate of the profit that an applicant forgoes by implementing a practice change. Opportunity costs are specific to each BMP. Not every BMP will offer an opportunity cost. Those that do will clearly list that in their cost determination, which is listed on the funding list at the bottom of each BMP description. This is a one-time payment, and it is a payment per acre that is offered. So please review the funding list to see if it is applicable to your BMP project. The impact adjustment is an additional per acre payment that is adjusted up to 15% based on the impact of your project. So the different factors that are looked at to determine this are carbon sequestration capacity, the number of livestock affected, the number of acres, the improvement of water quality and biodiversity, and the overall degree of practice change over the 3-year land use agreement. This adjustment is based off of the full implementation cost total that is eligible. Opportunity costs are not included in this calculation. Note that this adjustment could be up to 15%, but it could be less depending on the impact of the project. So here we have the BMPs being offered under the RALP program. You will see that we have 4 different funding categories. So first we have pasture management. The BMPs offered under this category are riparian area management, rotational grazing, adding legumes to existing forage stands, and targeted grazing for invasive plant biocontrol. Next, we have cropland conversion. BMPs offered under this category include cropland conversion to native forages or tame forages, establishment of perennial forages in strips, grass waterways, or saline areas, and intercropping. Third, we have tree establishment. This covers establishment of shelter belts, eco-buffers, and pollinator strips. And our 4th category is wetlands, and that includes restoration and construction of new wetlands. Please access the funding list on the website for the most up-to-date information for each BMP and the implementation cost eligible for each when filling out your application. We'll cover a few tips on applications. So you can apply for multiple BMPs in the same application, and we would encourage you to do so. It is critical that we have accurate acre estimates for each BMP project that you are applying for. You can use online tools such as GeoDiscover Alberta or Google Earth to map out your projects. Please make sure that on these maps, the acres are clearly labeled for each BMP project you are applying for, and that you are clearly outlining the different activities being implemented on the map for each project. Note that although projects are retroactive, funding is not guaranteed until your application has been approved. If we receive an application that is missing information, we will notify you, and approval of that application will not proceed until all the information we need is received. For any projects that take place on public land, and that is either partially or fully, you will need to get approval from a provincial rangeland agrologist, and their name will be required on the application form. Note that for wetlands, that category has its own application form, so if you're applying for that BMP, make sure you choose that application form on the website. Part of the application review process for RALP will include identifying projects for site inspections. These project verifications could involve virtual verification or in-person on-site visits, and that is to confirm that the activities have been implemented as described in your application. These verifications could occur at any time within the 3-year project term and may involve more than one inspection. Note that the final report for your project will require confirmation that you have maintained your project for the full 3 years. And if a year-end inspection shows that a project has not been maintained through the 3-year end date, the final 50% of funding will not be paid. So I'd like to talk about stacking with other programs. RALP funding cannot be stacked with any other government programs, and that includes federal, provincial, and municipal. You're also unable to stack projects with ALICE projects, That is because their agreements include the rights to carbon credits from the project, which, as we talked about before, is ineligible under RALP. The one exception to this stacking is for wetland projects. So wetland projects that were completed under the Wetland Replacement Program that have received landowner payments are still eligible for RALP funding. Note that projects completed under the WRP program must have been completed in the same intake cycle year as the RALP application was submitted. So here we have the program resources. At the top, we have the Sustainable CAP website. This website has links to all of our funding programs, including the RALP program. It also has an option to subscribe for updates, where you can sign up to get email notifications if there are updates made to any of our programs. Next, we have the RALP website. This website contains detailed information on everything we talked about today. So it contains the funding list, the application forms, the program terms and conditions, and other resources. We have a dedicated program email. The email is ralp@gov.ab.ca. And this email should be used if you have any questions about your BMP projects, or if you have feedback on the program, things you like or things you would like to see in the future. We would encourage you to submit that to that program email. Additionally, we have a phone number you can call with any questions. That is 310-FARM, so 310-3276. They will be able to provide you with answers or get you answers for questions if they do not have the answers themselves. So that is an excellent resource to use as well. That concludes our webcast today. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see your application soon.